The CEO of BioSecurity Technology in Omaha, who is accused of committing millions of dollars worth of securities fraud, appeared before a judge today. Daniel Lynn is 71. A judge ordered he be held on $750,000 bond and must surrender his passport while staying within 10 miles of Douglas County. Prosecutors allege Lynn sold securities on a dozen occasions, totaling more than $4 million to area investors. He reportedly claimed to investors and publications that he invented technology that could purify food cheaply and easily. Court documents say some of them got refunds, some of them did not. Court records claim a portion of the money went to Lynn's personal bank account. He faces up to 2 years in prison and up to $10,000 in fines for each count. He's due back in court next month.